Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast, and yet again there is no need to count down the days until St. Petersburg because it's actually done. We are here. IndyCar is back for 2024 and we have a race review to go from the round one of the season on the streets of St. Petersburg, and it wasn't quite the chaos fest we had last year. It was probably the polar opposite in fact, but still a great way to start the season, nice way to roll it in. And it was all about one man this weekend. That man was Joseph Newgarden, the pole, the victory, the most laps led, maximum points take home. He's back to loving it as Joseph Newgarden, and he really showed that he is serious business in 2024.
I mean, first of all, it's just brilliant to have IndyCar back. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't the frenzied, frantic race that we had last year. It was more of a fuel save, tyre management, one of those races. However, it was still just fantastic to see IndyCars on track. And as you said, Dan, Joseph Newgarden just obliterated the field. Penske hadn't won on a street course since 2022. Joseph Newgarden hadn't had a pole since 2022, and he put both of those things right this weekend with a truly dominant performance, really, and just the bounce back that Penske needed from a season where they were inconsistent, especially on the side of Newgarden and power. They just couldn't quite get it sorted out, let's say, on road and street courses. Obviously on ovals they were really strong, but yeah, this is just the start they needed as a team. And I think we'll go into a bit more detail in a bit about Newgarden and his revised approach, his revisionism this year, but it really seems to have worked out for him because his pole was super impressive. It was a tight margin, the tightest since Detroit 2012 over Felix Rosenqvist of all people. But that was a major goal of his. He got that at the first attempt. And yeah, I think kind of the improvement that Penske put in through the year last year, they made a few sacrifices, I think. And ultimately, after Honda won all of the street race in 2023, it was Team Chevy who completed the top four. And they were given a lot of credit by all of their drivers, more or less. Newgarden especially spoke a lot about gains that Chevrolet had made, that they had kind of spoken to the drivers, met with drivers from different teams and made huge leaps forward. So Chevrolet have made a massive leap forward. Penske have made a big leap forward, clearly. They finished 1, 3, 4. So that's ominous for the competition. But yeah, it was Newgarden dominated the race, 8 seconds ahead of O'Ward and led 92 of the 100 laps. So very impressive start. And I'll use that word again. It's quite ominous, really. He's a feisty and focused Newgarden, and it seems like a scary proposition.
Newgarden's start to the season is pretty impressive. If you look back on it, he hasn't finished in the top 15 the last 3 years at the season opener. Obviously, the last time he won the season opener, he went on to win the championship. But I think that's the only time it's happened since 2014 where the person's won the season opener has won the championship. So you've got a bit of a way to go, but still another 16 championship rounds left. But obviously a perfect start, and he was pretty dominant. I mean, at St. Petersburg, when he sort of was in the lead, yes, he lost it for a bit of time, but there was still a general confidence he would win it. And especially in that final stint, he sort of romped home. He seemed really comfortable, and it was a mighty impressive performance. Chevrolet have already matched their win record for Road and Street in 2023. McLaughlin took their only victory on Road and Street last year, and they've already matched that record. So it's a great start for Chevrolet. It's really encouraging that they've had that start to the season. And Penske as well, you know, a lot of the issues which were obvious last year, qualifying, street course form, have already sort of been resolved for them. So yes, there's a long way to go. We can't take too much from St. Petersburg because it is round one. There are different factors, but the start is encouraging for Chevrolet, for Newgarden, and for Penske.
So I think it is worth touching on Newgarden's kind of revised approach. It's become quite a big story, I think, kind of manifesting itself in the fact that he's unfollowed everyone on social media, but it really kind of started this story back in January on Content Day, when he kind of just said he wanted to get back to loving this, which did essentially imply that he'd maybe fallen out of love with IndyCar a little bit. And he kind of reinforced that a bit, speaking after the race yesterday, that he's tried to recenter his enjoyment, really try and focus on what is relevant, kind of off-track commitments, and really allow his focus to just be on working with the team, driving the race car. And he's already said that this is paying dividends somewhat, that he's happy. He felt really positive over the weekend, and you could see that. I mean, when he celebrated with the team, he looked jubilant. I mean, he was so pumped up after qualifying, and again, obviously after winning the race as well. There just seems like a renewed, revitalized energy about him. I think, he spoke very candidly, and I think Joseph Newgarden is one of the best people to listen to talking in the whole of sport, really. He's very transparent. He kind of speaks his mind, and he's very eloquent in doing so. And yeah, he said that at times it's been lonely, and he's a very much a perfectionist. He's an introvert, but he's a perfectionist, and that perfectionism has really meant that he's kind of piled almost too much pressure on himself. It's kind of been win or bust at times, and he realizes that's not sustainable. And yeah, he's kind of just getting back to the simple things. And I mean, there's so much depth in this. I've done a long read that's up on the DiveBomb website at the moment. So if you do want to kind of learn a bit more about this story and exactly how Newgarden is just refocusing over this season, essentially, then yeah, you can go and read it there. But it's a fascinating story because he's been really open about the fact that, maybe he did lose a bit of enjoyment, but he's just simplifying things, and his focus is purely back on track again, and he seems all the better for it.
Yeah, I think as well, just like kind of the enjoyment, like I said, is an important thing. Like without that, you could be really good, but without the enjoyment, there's no point in doing it. But there's not much else to really like saying it. But if you enjoy it as well, you're going to do better. You're going to want to do better. It's not just going to be about like kind of chasing the results. You're kind of going to take any like little achievements as well, like anything that you wouldn't see if you weren't enjoying it, if that makes sense. So I feel like just the enjoyment is like a big thing for him, and to say that he's getting that back is an amazing thing. So I kind of hope that kind of continues throughout the rest of the season, and it isn't something that is only happening right now because he has done really well, and then when it gets, say if he doesn't do as well, I don't want that to go away.
I mean, obviously last year ended the streak of 3 successive second places since his last championship win in 2019. Finished 5th. He described it as a comical end to the year with just calamity after calamity that wasn't really his fault or the team's fault. Just things were not going well, and I think maybe that's provoked some sort of crisis. Obviously, it feels hard to say there was a crisis when he won the Indy 500, defined his legacy, almost history-making form on ovals, but in a way, it seemed like there was some sort of crisis almost in his mind, and he's really just reflected over the off season and has really focused and drilled down on what really matters. And yeah, I think he is, as I've said, just a terrifying proposition, I think, for the competition this year, especially considering if they maintain that oval form and then go on and really continue to nail down and develop consistency on road and street courses, Penske and Newgarden could be tough to stop.
The important thing for Newgarden is going to be the rounds before the Indy 500. You look historically, 2023, he had 1 top 6 finish before the 500. 2022, he had 2 wins, but those are the only other finishes inside the top 13. 2021, he had 2 podiums and 2 top 6s, which wasn't bad, but he obviously started the season out with a retirement. And 2020, there was 1 win, another podium, but there were, again, finishes outside the points. And 2019, right, he was really strong. He took 3 podiums and 4 top 4s. He won the title. So it's really important for him just to lock this down between now and the 500, because what the issue is if he doesn't, he's always playing catch up in a championship, which you don't want to do. I think what made Palou so strong last year is because he started off so well, he always had this gap that he could maintain if there wasn't a round which wasn't as strong, and that was all right because he still had that gap. He just didn't have as much pressure on him, and I think that's essential for Newgarden. And it's not only him, it is a Penske problem. McLaughlin's sort of a similar story, and you look at it, obviously he started this weekend very well. We'll get onto him in a minute. Last year, he finished in the top 9 every race after the Indy 500. But before that, there were only 2 races he did that in the 5 rounds before that. So it's really important for Newgarden to lock that down if he does really want to be a championship contender this year. So it's early days. Don't get me wrong. We can't get ourselves too excited. But the next sort of 4 or 5 rounds are really important into building a championship push. I think, obviously, it's less significant at the start of the season because you're not the points that aren't as significant then, but you need to start off on the right foot, which is what has made champions so successful. Power did that in 2022 as well. Palou did in 21. So you just need to start the season on the right foot, but Newgarden's done exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is imperative. We always speak about it. That's how Power won the championship in 2022. It's how Palou won in 23. And, looking at 22, when Newgarden last had a really good chance of winning the championship, it was a little bit of inconsistency that let him down. And, we'll get on to the rest of the top four and the rest of the field shortly. But McLaughlin said that he may have made an audacious move on O'Ward if it wasn't for already having the championship in mind, which maybe speaks to how strong Penske feel they're going to be, that they really are going to be in that championship fight come the very end. But the focus has to be championship from the very start, just because the field is so competitive. And I think maybe that's where Newgarden has lost out recently, that he's just been so focused every race on winning. And if he's not winning, then he's not achieving the perfection that he strived for. So yeah, it's a really good point that leading up to the 500, he has to really notch some strong results and have that foundation heading into the really busy part of the season.
I remember who said it, might have been Chip Ganassi, who said this is the strongest IndyCar has ever been. And I think this weekend did quite prove that. There was a lot of surprises. I think the people were more competitive than we thought they would be. So we're in for quite the start to the season, I think. I think it was a really encouraging start, and Newgarden took the headlines, but I think probably it's worth having a quick look at Penske in general. McLaughlin third, Power fourth. That's the right one. Easily, probably both could have been the podium, had it not been for Pato O'Ward's pretty strong defence towards the end of the race. And McLaughlin Power qualified 8th and 9th and 8th respectively. So again, all cars in the fast 12, which was a problem last year, and worked their way through the field pretty effectively. They made some pretty good overtakes. I think McLaughlin kind of robbed Herta on the exit of turn 10, which was quite a nice move. And yes, they weren't quite on the speed of Newgarden, but they did look like a really strong package overall. And as we said, street courses were a real issue for them last year in general. I can't remember the best finish. I think McLaughlin was pretty strong, most notably at Nashville. But other than that, I mean, St. Petersburg last year wasn't strong at all. I think the best finish of the team was 7th from Power. So massive improvement from last year. Really made leaps and bounds already.
Yeah, they qualified pretty well and they raced really, really well. I mean, the way they kind of came through the field was impressive. McLaughlin at the start of the race, I think, made up 3 positions with just a really bold, gutsy move. His racecraft is super impressive. It kind of, I think Diff mentioned on the broadcast that it's almost like watching him in supercars, just lunging in like with the move you mentioned on Herta. So yeah, it was a superb drive from McLaughlin. Kind of, I would almost use the word seamless to the way that he got into those podium positions, just gradually, meticulously works his way through the field. And kind of likewise for Power, the pair of them had a pretty similar race, kind of followed each other up through the field. And it was quite an ominous sight, again, using that word, to see the 2 Penskes chasing down O'Ward, who, as you said, defended really, really well. But the pressure they put on O'Ward did suggest that, maybe if it wasn't thinking long term, they could have both put a move on him and really had the pace for it to be an all Penske podium. So a year that, to be honest, 12 months for Penske that has just been remarkable. Obviously, winning the Indy 500 with Newgarden, winning the NASCAR Cup Series Championship with Ryan Blaney. They've also won the Daytona 24 Hours. They've opened the WEC season with a 1-3. Now opening the IndyCar season with a 1-3-4. Very impressive. And just as an operation, they really seem to be getting back towards their best. And I think just touching on Power as well, obviously I've spoken about what a good driver was from McLaughlin. He's got a clearer mind. He's obviously not got the off-track issues this year, so there could be some really, really strong internal competition, which McLaughlin said is healthy and there's no angst there. They all kind of drive each other forward and help each other, progress. So, yeah, superb from Penske. Nothing to fault them, really.
I want to give a quick shout out to probably my driver of the weekend, bar Newgarden. I think that's got to go to Felix Rosenqvist. His first outing for my Shank Racing, obviously moving from McLaren in the off season, and he was mighty impressive. qualifying in the front row, he broke the lap record at St. Petersburg with 59.27. And he was probably the only person who looked even close to taking it to Newgarden. He jumped him in the pits. Obviously, Newgarden got him quite soon after one of the restarts, but ended up a very impressive P7. It was Marshank's best qualifying in 2 or 3 years. It was quite a long time. I can't remember the exact figure. And then, a very impressive P7 finish. I think that's better than any Marshank finish in 2023. And it's their best in quite a while. Let me confirm that. It was their best finish since Toronto in 2022. So great start for the season for Marshank Racing. Great start to Marshank life for Felix Rosenqvist.
Yeah, I mean, did we see this coming? Probably not. Should we have seen it coming? I mean, considering Marshank's struggles last year, again, probably not. However, Felix did end last year really strong. He got a podium in Portland. He got the pole at Laguna Seca. So he came into this with momentum, and he's clearly been relishing, having this team leader role now. He's enjoying the kind of smaller environment, the more intimate environment at Marshank with maybe a little bit less pressure, but he is the guy now. He's not kind of in the shadows of his teammates. And yeah, he was just rapid out of the blocks. I mean, practice, I think, did he top first? Yeah, in fact, he topped first practice by half a second, didn't he? Feels a long time ago now, but that was superb. I mean, half a second is not a margin you see often in IndyCar, especially on one of the shortest road and street tracks that they race on. So yeah, that was a fantastic start, and then he just always kept his place at the head. And I think really it comes to qualifying, and that's when he shows that this pace is no hoax. There's no, I don't know whether you say sandbagging or what have you in practice. It really was no hoax, and yeah, he really backed that up with a front row. And if it wasn't for 6,000th of a second, was it? I think around that in the end.
Yeah,
it could have been pole as well. And yeah, the race he dropped down a little bit, but their best road and street course finish as a team was 11th last year. I think their best finish overall was 10th at Texas. So yeah, massive upturn for Marshank, and Rosenqvist is showing early signs of really being able to guide that team forward. I mean, he was confident that street courses would be good for them, but I mean, did he expect to be this good this quickly? I know, obviously, Andretti partnership, but he was faster than most of the Andrettis all weekend. So yeah, fair play. And I mean, he even put pressure on Newgarden early in the race as well for a period, and he was the only one that could really stay anywhere near him, even if he did drop off eventually. So yeah, bravo Felix, definitely for me, maybe aside from Newgarden, driver of the weekend.
Yeah, he definitely kind of just kept up with kind of everything, and like you said, we didn't really expect it from kind of Marshank, and especially this early on. We kind of, well, at least I kind of expect them to be a bit kind of lower down, but it was a nice surprise. I think it was just one of them things where we shouldn't have underestimated him, but I feel like it was because of the team that he's on where we didn't really expect it, but he did really well to say that, and to kind of just be the only one at the beginning that was able to put the pressure on. And I think Newgarden definitely, he wouldn't have expected it, and I think that may have surprised him just a little bit, and maybe shocked him. But I think, yeah.
I mean, I think one of my quotes of the weekend is Will Power saying that Rosenqvist was on another planet in practice, and I think even if nothing else came from the weekend, that would have been progress enough for a team that did struggle last year. But yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward now to seeing what he can do this year, because I don't think we really expected them to be a factor, but it's another team in the mix.
I think on the other side of the technical alliance, though, Andretti might be pretty disappointed for how their weekend went. It looked pretty good in practice. They looked pretty competitive. And, they have been on street courses last year. Obviously, Kirkwood took the 2 victories in Nashville and Long Beach, and they were pretty competitive. In Toronto, Herta was in and around the mix. And St. Petersburg last year, they were pretty competitive until they all somehow found their own way to crash. They did better this year, kept it out of the barriers. Ericsson had to retire with some sort of mechanical issue about midway. Herta finished 5th, which wasn't too bad. I mean, it's a good start to the season for him. We know sort of how last season went, so it's a nice start. He was one of 3 drivers to lead a lap. It was only 1, but it counts for a point, so it's not too bad. Kirkwood qualified outside the fast 12. Qualified 18th, actually. It's pretty disappointing, but he did some good work in the race, ended up 12th in the end. So probably slightly underwhelming considering the factors of last year and how practice went. But is better than the start they had last year on the other side of the equation. And obviously, if Mark's doing well, something's obviously going right. So they got all that feedback to share to each other. And I think although maybe results-wise it isn't as good as it could have been, they can definitely take more from it than meets the eye.
Yeah, I think the pace is definitely still there for Andretti. Again, it's this whole thing of having to really just put entire weekends together, and I think that will come. Obviously, with the downsizing now, they've maybe got to adapt a little bit to that with a bit of redistribution of personnel. But yeah, more people on each car now, as we've spoken about a lot, that should help them in the long run. Persa, as you said, started pretty well. I mean, I think he had one of the most impressive qualifying moments. He topped his group in Q1 on the black tyres, on the supposedly slower tyres.
And then couldn't go fast from the red tyres.
Yeah, and then I think he tried to use the blacks again in the Fast 6, and that didn't go too well. But I mean, he still started P4, I think. Again, not too shabby. Yeah, I think there are a few gremlins through the weekend for Herta. Actually, I think he had a low voltage issue in practice 2, and then I think there was an issue in warm up maybe with fuel numbers not showing up on the dash. So a few little things for Andretti. Obviously, Ericsson also retired. But yeah, I think solid from Herta. Kirkwood, I think, again, he was kind of a victim of just the field being so close together. I mean, one little misjudgment, I think he was a little bit out of sync on laps, and because there was a bit of debate as to when the green tyres would actually come in. I think with all of the lighter components ahead of the hybrid, these tyres are actually intended for the hybrid. I think they're a new construction of some sort, so they are obviously not designed for this lighter car. So there was a bit of confusion as to kind of when the tyres were going to come in. I think that was what set Kirkwood back, in qualifying. And again, one little error and you can lose 10 places, even if you are fast enough to be in the Fast 6, which I think Kirkwood probably was. And on a street track that's tight like that, you can make progress, but you can't make much progress. So I think he did a decent job to get up to 12th. And I think Ericsson was actually quite impressive as well. He was really quickly up to pace. I mean, he topped the Sebring test recently, and again, it's another case of kind of the timesheet's not lying there. And I mean, he got quite emphatically into the Fast 12 and then into the Fast 6 as well. And he's grown more reliable as a qualifier, and I think he already looks really comfortable in an Andretti. And yeah, he was probably going to finish inside the top 6, I would have said, if it wasn't for some sort of power issue.
Let's go to Pato O'Ward, P2, which was the same results he got last year with a very, very different circumstances. I think he'd be a lot more happy at the result of this one. He was pretty quick away, came qualified 3rd. I mean, could have well have been on pole if he didn't probably make a slight overcorrection in the final corner on his lap. That probably cost him pole, to be honest, but drove very well in the race. He didn't really make much movement. He was quite quiet, to be honest. Considering for the guy who came second, he was pretty quiet. I think all he really did was overtake Rosenqvist into turn 4. On occasion, he overtook Herta into turn 10. But he got the job done. He was nice and relaxed. He wasn't making any over-ambitious moves or anything. And another great way to start the season for O'Ward. I think the last couple of seasons he has started out really impressively. Obviously, he did last year before that, and the year before that. He's really made inroads at the start of the season, and a nice, gentle way to start the season. Very good performance, which you can build on. Go looking into upcoming rounds.
Yeah, I think he'll be a whole lot happier with the way that the start of his season's gone this year than the way it went last year. It's a much more satisfying second place, I think. I mean, there is a bit of a deficit to Penske, as we've spoken about, so they'll have to find that, because he was defending, but boy, did he defend well. And yeah, I think up until he was kind of under pressure late on, it was a quiet race, but not really a criticism of him, because I know last year there were those few races, as we've talked about a lot, where he was just maybe taking too many unnecessary risks, and he's becoming really reliable. Obviously, that kind of started at the back end of last year, but I mean, his qualifying form is exquisite, really. I mean, you can almost always bank on him to get to the Fast 6, and that's massive credit to him. So yeah, really, really good start to the season, I would say. I mean, he maximised what was on the cards there and more, really. So yeah, great start, and I don't know what's possible for him this year.
Yeah, I think for him, probably a championship push. I think he did mention that he wasn't going to do anything stupid and that he was going to keep his head down this year. So we'll see what comes of it. I think Long Beach isn't a track he's traditionally gone as well out of St. Petersburg. So I think he's now got 3 second place at St. Petersburg, which is slightly interesting. But he'll obviously go to Long Beach and see how he does there. Street courses have never sort of been McLaren's forte as such. So we'll see what happens in the next few rounds. Interestingly, actually, O'Ward, I think, has finished second now 11 times in IndyCar. 6 of them, I believe, have been behind Newgarden. So I think they've also had 8-1-2 finishes with each other, and they've been racing for about 4 years together. So it's an interesting statistic between the two of them. So yeah, there we are. A little interesting stat. But yeah, I think O'Ward was pretty happy. There was no chance he's going to catch Newgarden, so he really did maximise what was on the table for him. Much quicker than his teammates, who we'll probably get onto a bit later. So strong performance from O'Ward, great start to the season for him, and obviously holding off the Penskes at the end under quite a lot of pressure. He even had Herta and Palou sort of catching up to that group at the end. He kept his head down and brought home a pretty good result.
Yeah, as well. Like you said, it was a quiet race. I don't know if that was just because my stream was like going off all the time, but it was very quiet. But then quiet, like we said, doesn't mean bad. As long as he's kind of quiet, it just mean he's keeping out of the way. He's not kind of getting into them risks like he was last year and last season. And like I said, as long as he kind of keeps it going this season, you know, as long as like in the middle he doesn't kind of dip, and then like towards the end he then kind of gains this patientness back, then I feel like he'll be fine. He just, like you said, needs to keep his head on, make sure it stays on, make sure he doesn't have just them couple of races where he loses it a little bit, because them couple of races could literally mean everything, basically.
Let's run through the finishing order from the race, and obviously we're touching on the ones we haven't mentioned. So Newgarden, O'Ward, McLaughlin, Power, Herta. P6 was Alex Palou. It was a bit of a odd weekend for Palou. Didn't look like he really had the pace in practice, which was proven by him not advancing from Group 1 in qualifying, which was quite a surprise to many people. And understandably, he is Alex Palou, he was last year's champion, but I think he drove really well. I think Ganassi have never been strong here. Dixon has never won here, and he's the second most winningest driver of all time, which says quite a lot. Again, Palou hasn't really gone too strongly here either, recovered from 13th to 6th, which was, I think he maximised what they had today, and he wasn't even too far off Herta, O'Ward, McLaughlin, that sort of pack. So good performance from Palou. I think he made the most of what he had, and he keeps his streak alive, finishing inside the top 8 for a ridiculous amount of time. So, you know, it's not loads to shout home about, but it's sort of the start he had at St. Petersburg last year. So he's got some stuff to build from it.
Yeah, and if you're thinking, oh, well, this isn't going to be a dominant Alex Palou season, well, I think this is actually a better start than he got last season. So there's something. I mean, as you said, they weren't particularly fast through practice, and they didn't make the Fast 12. I think he started 13th, and only Toronto was worse in terms of his qualifying last year on road and street courses. So read into that what you will. But again, it was kind of just an authoritative, controlled Palou drive through the field, and he climbed. I mean, actually, to be fair, he was still sat around the outside edge, the edge of the top 10 for a while, but I think really late on he turned up the wick a little bit and found a way to make that progress. And yeah, I mean, on a weekend where it's not been all that smooth and performance hasn't been there, to pull out that sort of result and that sort of drive is really impressive, and it's testament to Palou, really, and he always finds a way. And I mean, it just reminds me of his teammate, really, Scott Dixon.
P7 was Felix Rosenqvist ahead of Rossi, who had a pretty quiet weekend. He was, again, similarly to Palou, quite a quiet climber, qualified 15th. He got held up in traffic, I think it was by Tom Blomqvist in his group session, and recovered to 8th. Again, nothing too impressive, but a decent start to the season, I think. I think a lot of drivers had quite quiet races, but a result they can be pretty satisfied with. And I think Rossi, again, another case of that. Similarly, again, I think Dixon, P9. Again, Ganassi didn't quite have the pace this weekend, got into the Fast 12, but only qualified 11th. Yeah, it was a pretty, I wouldn't say underwhelming, but I think obviously Dixon knows he can do better, but this by no means is his best track on the schedule. So P9, I don't think he'd be too disappointed with. I think it ends his streak of finishing inside top 7, is it? I believe?
Yes, top seven every race by Long Beach. But yeah, Rossi, Dixon, I've not really got any notes on them, to be honest. They both did have quiet weekends. It was kind of a steady Dixon. I mean, Rossi always seems to have something go wrong in qualifying. So maybe that needs to be improved a little bit, but it's not always his fault.
No.
Yeah, again, both of them just kind of reliable. You can expect them to just kind of creep into the top 10.
I think maybe quiet performer of the weekend was VeeKay. Qualified a really impressive P7, actually. He wasn't too far off the fast 6 in that case. In fact, he was just over a 10th off, which again isn't too bad at all. And finished P10. I think he only had 2 top 10 finishes all year last year. One was at Portland, one was at the Indy 500. So it's his first top 10 finish on the street course since St. Petersburg in 2022, actually. So good start to the year for VeeKay. Qualified well, has some good pace and brought home a top 10 finish. So maybe the work of Ryan Hunter-Reay last year really did help, and it's a good start, because I think last year was pretty underwhelming, but he started pretty impressively out the block. So stuff to build on, and I think quite a performer of the weekend was VeeKay. It was a decent performance.
Yeah, I was super impressed by VeeKay. I think obviously last year was rough for Fred Carpenter Racing. They, after I think it was 7 races, got rid of Daly, replaced him with Hunter-Reay. VeeKay at the time wasn't really performing that much better than Daly, you would say. And yeah, it was an underwhelming season. I mean, he still finished 14th in the championship, which, considering their lack of performance, which, you know, they've admitted, Ed Carpenter's admitted, I mean, it was pretty impressive actually to still finish 14th in the championship. And maybe there was a bit of momentum late on. Started well, learned a bit off Hunter-Reay, I think, in terms of race weekend preparation and kind of just the analysis of his driving, which helped. And he really needed to come out of the blocks quickly. I think the team did as well, and absolutely did. He was top 5 in first practice. I think he was kind of right up near the top end in second practice as well, finished 6th. So that was a good start, just the sort of start they needed. And I mean, for VeeKay, last year was the first in his 4-year career. This is now his 5th year that he hadn't got a podium. He's now the team leader, obviously. I mean, he's the same age, 23, as Rasmussen, but obviously Rasmussen, a rookie, reigning Indy Next champion. So yeah, VeeKay's really got a role where, a bit like Rosenqvist, where he's got to just guide this team forward, and to qualify 7th then as well. Again, really, really strong from VeeKay. The off-season work, I think, on his side, on the team side as well, they've put a lot of work into improving, obviously, after last year. And it's probably quite rewarding for them to have had such a just comfortable race for once, not kind of dwindling in the mid-pack in a bit of an anonymous position. You were seeing VeeKay, he was putting moves on Dixon, he was putting moves on Power, and we didn't really see much of that in 2023. So, yeah, kind of held his own inside the top 10, and a really good result.
I think again, P11 was another pretty underrated performance from Santino Ferrucci. Qualified 14th and finished 11th. Again, we didn't see too much for Ferrucci, but a good start to the season for him. It's his best finish apart from the Indy 500 since Long Beach last year. So good start to the season for Ferrucci. I think he performed pretty well. Again, there's not really too much to say about the race. I think there's a lot of drivers who drove quite quietly well, but he's again included in that bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people have mentioned just that the Penske Alliance, I think they spoke about it on the broadcast, it is having an impact. And I mean, Ferrucci actually qualified just on the edge of the Fast 12. I think he must have started 14th. And that was having missed the entirety of second practice. So with a bit more preparation, I mean, he could have been in the Fast 12. And that's quite an improvement on last year when, as we've spoken about and maybe joked about a little bit, their best performances came either on super speedways or repaves. Otherwise, they kind of struggled a lot.
It was a partial repave in turn 3. So
yeah,
maybe that was
one
it.
Corner. Maybe that was it. But yeah, I think he was pretty content with the qualifying, actually, despite having not run that much before qualifying in second practice. And yeah, I mean, I think there is a feeling that the team have made quite a bit of progress again, and he kind of ran around the top 10 all race, which is not something we really saw last year. So maybe it's showing the Penske impacts already, given the steps forward Penske made, obviously, on the street course. Maybe AJ Foyt making a similar leap.
Then we go on to Carl Kirkwood. You mentioned Callum Ilott. He was confirmed as a standard for McLaren. Obviously, we hinted at that last week. It was a pretty quiet weekend for Ilott, but I think he did a decent job at sort of getting some decent points for the leader circle in that car. I'm sure they'll be comfortable anyway. But just an opportunity for him to get back in an IndyCar. Because I don't think we were really expecting miracles. He has had a bit less testing time than most of the others. Qualified 16th, finished 13th. He's another driver who didn't really see much of. So it's not too much to say about him. But I think considering he was a standard, it wasn't a bad performance by any means.
Yeah, I mean, he only had 1 day of testing time on the Homestead Miami Roval, a bit of hybrid testing. So this was the first time he'd even driven the non-hybrid car. So, yeah, decent job, I think, from him. Got a word in with him again at the press conference last week. And again, it was kind of just, he didn't really know what to expect. He wasn't putting massive pressure on himself. He knew that, if he could deliver something, it was an opportunity to prove himself. But I mean, Malukas, I think it's not confirmed, but they said on NBC that he's expecting to miss thermal as well. So we might see Ilott again, and he's still kind of just hunting around. And if an opportunity arises, then maybe later in the year, whatever it may be. But obviously, WEX is focused still.
Yeah, I was going to say just him kind of filling in was more just him being able to get his name out there to kind of remind people that even though he's not in the series this season, he's still like out there and he's still kind of available if kind of need it, and to just so that they don't forget about him. But yeah, he did all right. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't like expecting much just for the fact of he didn't have a lot of testing time and kind of not a lot of time to kind of get used to the car and stuff like that. But he did good, so there's not much else to say.
Well, I think pretty unsung performance from P14, Kiffin Simpson. He was the top rookie. Again, he was another one. We didn't really see anything of Kiffin Simpson all race, but he drove. Well, probably could be a good thing for some drivers, really, sort of keeping it composed. And top rookie finished P14. Not a bad first outing for Chip Ganassi Racing at all. So did better than Armstrong and Lundqvist did. Obviously, that's a bit different, but not a bad performance from Simpson. A decent start to life to IndyCar racing for him.
I think, up with kind of Rosenqvist and Newgarden, just given how low the expectations were. Yes, obviously he's in a Ganassi car, but I think people almost had this feeling that Simpson would just be completely uncompetitive. 19 years old, he didn't have any real headline results. I think only a couple of podiums in Indy Next, Indy Lights. So, yeah, people weren't really expecting that much from him, but he was right competitive with his teammates. I think it took him a little bit of time to get up to speed. His first time on a proper street course. Obviously, I think they test at Sebring because it kind of replicates the street course a bit. But this is the first time on a proper enclosed wall street course for him. So, again, that's something. And, yeah, pretty solid. He started 23rd, but I think just the way that he made that constant progress through the race, he drove in a measured way, clearly. Not that we really saw it, but he kind of just kept it clean where others were making mistakes, and whether through his own racing or simply just being controlled and not making mistakes, he managed to make his way up the pack, and 14th best rookie. I don't think anyone expected that, really. So, yeah, great start for the 19-year-old, which still feels a bit scary to say.
He was followed by Fittipaldi. He was the biggest mover, qualifying P26, finished P15. And then Rahal, Blomqvist finished 17th, Canapino 18th. He lost a couple of positions, ironically, trying to overtake Callum Ilott of all people, which was quite funny. P19 was Jack Harvey. Dale Coyne Racing managed to announce their driver just in time for the race. I think it was done on Tuesday. Just so you're in a loop, it's Harvey for 14 rounds, and then they'll have Nolan Siegel for the Indy 500, the Thermal Club, Long Beach, and Toronto. So we'll see Siegel in the car for the next 2 rounds. He also won Indy Next this weekend, worth noting, absolutely dominated the field. It was a highly impressive performance from Siegel. I think he actually led every lap, so really blew it away in Indy Next. And in the other car was Colin Braun. He's going to be, or he was there at St. Petersburg. He will also be there for Thermal. The plans for that car, we don't know after that. So I think they said the intention was to run Braun for more races, but obviously it will depend on funding. There was no sponsor on the car this weekend. So hopefully we'll see maybe a bit more of him, but we'll see. Anyway, Harvey finished 19th, qualified last on the grid. Obviously, doesn't sort of truly represented because of the group. Finished P19, which wasn't too bad. ahead of Lundgaard, who was quite unfortunate. He got puncture. Was it lap one? He was lap one. He got puncture. Yeah, and then he was sort of off sync for strategy, so ends up P20, which is a bit frustrating for Lundgaard, considering how well he has gone on street courses in recent years. I mean, he did lead the second most laps of any driver, so not bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, I just like to. Well, first of all, we may as well just brush over Rahal. They were a bit of a disappointing weekend, I would say. I think Graham Rahal had a lot of just sort of, again, minor issues, braking, gear shifts, just kind of continued into the race, a little bit rough. Fittipaldi, again, made good progress. He's not really raced on street courses, so again, decent for him. Lundgaard, as you say, we don't really know where he was going to be. I think he did well to get in the Fast 12, given where their performance was at. But yeah, I think just looking at Coyne, I think no one really expected anything from them. They're underdogs, and
I think Harvey did pretty well, to be fair, to finish where he finished.
I think he did do really well. I mean, I don't think he was too impressed with the car in qualifying. I think he said it was a little bit underwhelming. He expected a bit more, but I think post-race he then had kind of changed those sentiments and said he really feels like they've started to gain a bit of momentum. And just given how underprepared the team came into the season, I think he feels the platform that's kind of been built is not a bad one. And heading into, well, not heading into thermal for him, but heading into Barber, I think is his next race.
Yeah.
So he's got a bit of time to wait now. But yeah, I think he's relatively pleased with how it ended up going. And yeah, good job from him. I mean, there were times in practice he was actually faster than the RLL cars, which is, again, pretty decent work, especially considering both cars were quite
ironic for that matter as well.
Yeah. I think both Coyne cars were quite off the pace in testing. So to be kind of where they were, and I mean, Colin Brown ended up finishing, or Colin Brown, as I think we're supposed to pronounce it, has ended up, he ended up a lap down. He made a little error, but again, I mean, he was approximately a second off the pace sort of through practice and qualifying, but it was a baptism of fire. He drove an IndyCar for the first time in the Sebring test just over a week before being thrown into his first race weekend on a really tight street course. And I think really he said his goal was just to run all the laps. And yeah, he made a little mistake, which meant he missed out on one lap. But I think generally he was pretty impressed as well. And it was a lot to take in for him, he said, but progress. And yeah, just on the Siegel front as well, I grabbed a word with him in the press conference after the Indy Next race. It was a dominant victory for him, really, a bit like Newgarden's, to be honest. And yeah, he's racing up next at thermal. So here's just a little look at what he had to say about his preparations for that and how ready he feels after just one test with the team.
In the meantime, let's go to Archie O'Reilly from DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Archie, unmute yourself. Go ahead.
First of all, for Nolan, obviously it was announced during the week that you'd be doing 4 races for Dale Coyne. How ready do you feel for this opportunity, obviously, after the recent test, and how valuable do you feel it will be to gain some race experience in IndyCar ahead of hopefully stepping up full-time next year?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's going to be a challenge for sure. I have one day in the car going to thermal for the first race weekend. It's not going to be easy. IndyCar is one of the most competitive race series in the world. So it's going to be a challenge for sure. But, I think I'm ready for it. I think Indy Next prepares you really, really well for IndyCar. And I'm more excited than nervous for sure. So I think it'll prepare me well for, hopefully 2025 and also for the rest of 2024 and Indy Next. I think it'll be a great experience, and I'm going to learn a lot and grow as a driver.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And then for Louis, I mean, what sort of improvements have you targeted for this year, essentially just to really try and mount a title challenge compared to last year? I know you were really fast, but maybe do you feel you could have been more consistent possibly?
Yeah, I mean, obviously last year we had the most poles, so we knew that the pace wasn't an issue. So we were just, trying to continue on that pace, which we have been, just like I said, got a bit unlucky in quali yesterday. But yeah, I think the main thing for us this year is just consistency. There was a switch that happened last year, halfway through the season, in my mind, where it went from winning a championship just to winning races. So there's certain moves I made during the year that I wouldn't have made if I was going for a championship. like IMS when I was holding second against my teammate Hunter, that kind of move that put me out of the race, as an example. But yeah, I think just focusing on the points. I think today was a good example of that. There was twice where I could have gone for a move on Jacob. It could have worked, or it could have taken us both out. So I decided not to.
Thank
It
you.
wasn't worth it. You're welcome.
And finally for Jacob, do you see an IndyCar opportunity coming up in 2025? And if that was an opportunity, is there any chance that that would be with Abel?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Obviously, right now, Able Motorsports is an Indy 500 only IndyCar team, and my goal is to, race an IndyCar full time and contend for championships. So, yeah, I think all options are open. Obviously, I have the same name as the team, so that does change the dynamic just a little bit. But it's something that I think I'm still going to have to earn regardless, and IndyCar racing, isn't necessarily cheap. So it takes, sponsors, partners, all of that. And that's all going to have to come together regardless of what team I'm driving for. So, hopefully, but nothing's for sure.
Thanks a lot, guys. Congratulations on today. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Archie, for joining us. Any other follow-ups here in person? Otherwise, great start to 2024, guys. Thanks for coming in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks at Barber Motorsports Park. Again, Nolan Siegel, Jacob Abel, Louis Foster.
P21 was Christian Rasmussen. He had some sort of issue, I believe. I can't remember the ins and outs of it, but he did have an issue which left him down ahead of.
Well, I don't know whether actually the lap loss was at the start, but he couldn't get fired up in the pit lane at the start. I don't know whether that was what lost him the lap or
I think
not.
he said he had some power issues after that or something. So he had some sort of issue. I can't remember the ins and outs of it, but he was affected by that. Then it was Braun, and then Lundqvist, who obviously lost quite a few laps because he had a collision with Grosjean, which was pretty clumsy from Grosjean. Way too optimistic into turn 10 for a move that was never going to happen, which was quite disappointing because up to that point, I think Grosjean had a really good weekend. He'd qualified in the top 6 and he was doing all right in the race, and it was just a very clumsy maneuver, which obviously he retired a bit later on of a mechanical issue, but that obviously hampered his progress anyway. And saw Lundqvist really take out the equation too. So it was a bit disappointing from Grosjean, to be honest. But yeah, it's round one. These things happen.
Yeah, I think that whole incident was just disappointing because Lundqvist had kind of made good progress through the weekend. And yeah, just to touch on Grosjean first, pretty good weekend. I mean, he was right again, a bit like Rosenqvist, a bit like VeeKay. I felt they were a trio that really impressed and kind of against the odds, just showing that these smaller teams, quote unquote, really can challenge. And yeah, I think he was 5th in second practice. He was somewhere up near there in first practice, and yeah, qualifying he was another that really impressed, did really well. And I think he was almost too brave. He was very un-Grosjean in the first corner. He almost was too brave on the brakes and lost a few positions. I mean, where did he qualified 5th, didn't he, in the end, which is superb, really. Given, I mean, Hunkos have had one qualifying better than that. I qualified 2nd, didn't he, in Laguna Seca 2021? No, 2.
Yes, 2.
I don't know that they've had many qualifying results better than that. So really, to get up to speed like that so quickly, I was really impressed with. And again, he was showing that he's pretty decent around this track foremost, but to run inside the top 10 pretty consistently through the race was solid. And yeah, it was just clumsy, the move. He kind of just shoved his nose up there when Lundqvist had the corner. It was far too late. And I think on the radio he initially complained that Lundqvist had turned in on him, but actually, to Grosjean's credit, he took accountability, which is progress, because that's not something that we've always seen. I mean, the drive-through is a race ruiner anyway, and it's unfortunate that then he couldn't finish, but I actually think he will still be pretty positive off the back of this weekend. And yeah, just Lundqvist as well. I mean, not the greatest. I mean, it wasn't what he delivered for Meyershank, but obviously Ganassi was struggling a little bit there on the back foot a little bit. And I think he started around 20th, and he was 10th in his group, Lundqvist. And it was really the race that he started to come into his own, I think. And he was dueling with the likes of Ilott again, was kind of on the brink of the top 10. But we'll never know what was going to happen there.
And he was ahead of Ericsson, who said had a mechanical issue halfway through. Stingray Rob, who sort of did a bit of, did he just made
He had
some
a brake
mistake.
failure. No, he had a
Brake
brake failure. I think he had a brake failure. Well, I don't know if it was brake failure or just a brake issue because I mean they mentioned on the broadcast something about there were a lot of marbles in the track on the track which were kind of getting stuck in the brake rotors, and that's possibly what happened to Marcus Armstrong as well. We don't know that for sure. We'll get into that in a moment, I think, because he had a decent weekend. But yeah, I think it was some sort of brake issue, and actually at the time he felt he was making decent progress through the field. He was, I think it was in second practice possibly. He said that it was actually the best IndyCar he'd ever driven. So progress there, made small steps, qualified not particularly well, but I think he said he was hurt a bit by backing up again there. So he could have qualified a little bit better. But I think through the race, he did start to make a little bit of progress, but I think it was lap 33. His race was over, unfortunately.
And then it was Marcus Armstrong. He was P27. He obviously crashed in turn 10. It's a bit, I think it'd be a bit frustrating because it was one where he looked like he was going to abandon it, and then he sort of didn't, and then he sort of hit the wall, and that was race over. So it would probably be a bit frustrating, kicking himself slightly. But you know, these things happen. We all have to make mistakes during a season, and his just came at St. Petersburg. So yeah, round one, not the end of the world, really, is it?
Yeah, I think he said in a post-race interview, he was basically saying how he was doing it all the times perfect before, but then this time for some reason it just went off. So it's like I said, he's definitely kicking himself about that. But it's the first race, like I said. If he can get it out of the way now and then throughout the season it's fine, then we're good. As long as this doesn't become an issue. But it's just an incident, really.
Yeah, there's conflicting things have been said on that incident because he has said it was his mistake. I think he even posted on social media saying it was his mistake, but at the same time, it looked like there was some sort of brake issue. There might have been some sort of brake issue. Again, maybe a piece of marble got stuck in there, but he said he wasn't pushing. He was kind of just managing fuel, saving fuel at the time, and just locked up despite doing it. Taking the corner exactly the same as he did, and he kind of swiped the tyre barrier, got into the wall a little bit heavier as well. And it was a shame. I think, will he come away from the weekend positive after crashing? Maybe not, but I think he can come away from the weekend feeling pretty positive because I think it's the second time he's actually returned to a track. The first time he qualified the best of the Ganassis in 7th on the Indy Road course. And this time he qualified the best of the Ganassis as well on his return to St. Pete. So that's progress. I think that's something he really can take away. Beating all of his teammates. I mean, his teammates including Alex Palou and Scott Dixon. So yeah, that was good. He's just got to, when he's kind of high up the field like that, he's just got to really put it together and in the race. And whether it was an error, whether it was an issue, whatever, it'll come together eventually. Because I think generally, pretty promising weekend, and it wasn't just qualifying either. He was kind of keeping his own ahead of his teammates in the race, and he kind of ran ahead of them all in practice as well. So yeah, unfortunate ending to what was otherwise a pretty strong weekend.
I think in 2024 we should give out some post-race awards. I'm feeling a bit of a new mood this year. What should we do? Unsung hero of the weekend?
Yeah, let's roll it off with
let's get some nominees. Rosenqvist has got to be one. I think VeeKay's got to be one. I think Simpson's got to be one. Let's pick up those. I think probably Rosenqvist.
Unsung hero. I think in terms of unsung, I actually feel like Rosenqvist's praises were sung enough. I'm actually going to go for Kiffin Simpson.
Okay.
Whoa. I have to go with Rosenqvist just because I didn't expect it. That was really it.
We're locking Rosenqvist.
Sorry.
Any other ones we want to do?
Well, I would say maybe surprise of the weekend.
Okay, surprise of the weekend. What do we go? Do we go for
a bad surprise or a good surprise?
Whatever you want to interpret it as, because that is what I would give to Rosenqvist. I would give him surprise of the weekend. And then they kind of fit into one another.
They're pretty similar. I'm gonna go Penske, just as a general team. Penske.
Oh, you went for a team. Okay.
You can go for anything, can't you?
All right, surprise. I'm gonna go with that surprise. Just Marcus Armstrong. I was really I was just wanting him to not crash. I
And
was just wanting him to do well.
because I've got one in mind for this, why don't we also do story of the weekend? Because I think my story of the weekend is just Team Chevy's improvement, really. I mean, having not won a single street course race all year last year, having really on road and street courses been dominated by Honda, to lock out the front four to finish all the top four Team Chevy cars, I think super impressive. I think Paso Award gave some great insights actually about the fact that there'd been a meeting with about 25 of them, including his teammates Rossi, Malukas at the MTC. I think Malukas, he said, was there virtually, but and they'd met with 25 people, big long table. They'd just given absolutely everything that they thought would improve. They needed to improve, and I mean, Award, McLaughlin both said that the best part of the Chevrolet package is all of it, not just fuel saving or what have you. The best of it, is just everything. And I think Newgarden said as well that often you'll kind of give a menu of stuff and you'll get some things, but kind of ordered everything on the menu and got everything from it. So I think Team Chevy are my story of the weekend.
I'm going to go for a sort of general IndyCar is back, and it was back with a great fashion. I think you guys noted there were a lot of new fans this weekend. It seemed like there was a new sort of party atmosphere, and I think it was mentioned there was a lot of fans wearing F1 merch, for example, which on the face of it, like, well, that's a bit odd, but at the end of the day, it's bringing in another demographic, which I think is crucial for the series. So the age of people was a lot younger, so that's a fantastic storyline to start the year, and hopefully it's going to bring in a lot more followers towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few instances of a bit of gatekeeping on Twitter, X. I'm not calling it X. Let's just call it Twitter. I've seen a few instances of gatekeeping, and really just do better. Like, we want new fans. We want the series to grow, and without new fans, the series isn't going to grow. So I think this is a massive positive. I mean, it also shows you've got F1 fans wanting to check out IndyCar, and you know, IndyCar, as we know, is kind of the superior racing product. So as soon as they get into IndyCar, that might be that bug caught. So I think it's a massive positive. And yeah, it's just great to have IndyCar back. Just sitting down every evening, watching cars on track. It's therapeutic and just thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree though with the gatekeeping. Like, I understand you're kind of wanting it to keep it like the way that it is in terms of like maybe the inclusivity and stuff like that, but you need new fans. It needs to grow, and also if it's the same fans over and over again, eventually it'll end up dying out. Like, it sounds really bad, but if it's the same fans, sometimes people get bored of it and stuff like that. And also, you just need people to see how amazing kind of IndyCar is, and if you don't get new fans, how are you going to get that kind of recognition? And it's just stuff that not that it shouldn't happen, but maybe be a bit politer with it. If that makes sense.
I mean, it needs to be different to just like some sort of toxic fighting. We need to be accepting of any new people that want to watch the series, and I mean that's part of our goal here. We really want to try and help grow the series over in the UK and grow the fan base there. And I mean, we want this to be accessible for new fans as well, because new fans that's how IndyCar is going to grow, getting new people on board. So yeah, I mean, Ellie, do you have any other story of the weekend, or are you kind of siding with that one?
I'll probably just side with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I've got something to put to you guys as well. I mean, how did you find getting used to all of the as they used as the new faces in new places? How did, like, the liveries, all of the
not too
bad.
bad.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't like it. I had to have my photo wrap open all the time.
I think like just because it's been such a long off season, we've had a lot of time to get used to things, and
yeah.
I actually didn't get Palou confused with Rosenqvist once, somehow. I don't quite know how that's happened, but Palou in DHL is kind of fit. Grosjean already looks really weirdly good in a Hunkos suit and a Hunkos car. It fits for some reason, as does Rosenqvist at Meyer Shank. It just fits really well.
I think there's one more award we need to give out, which is going to be the meme of the weekend. Now, I've got one in mind. Does anyone else have anything that springs to mind?
I don't know if I saw any memes.
Oh, there's one. I mean,
there's some always amusing stuff on the broadcast. Like Marty Snyder was like doing weights to I think try and simulate G loads in a very poor way.
Weird way.
Yeah.
I think my favourite one was Lee Diffie was speaking to John Bon Jovi, telling him a quote that he is his wife's hall pass. And
I heard that.
Which I think is probably got to go to the first meme of the weekend.
Yeah, fair enough.
Funny.
Hey,
so
and
the broadcast is back.
Yeah, on a more serious note on Bon Jovi, he said that, I think he was just jokingly asked, "Oh, would you like to be a driver?" And he said, "First step is to buy a team." I mean, we would take that. I mean, that would be
racing.
That again would be something that would bring eyes to the series and hopefully bring some more funding into the series at a time where they do need to convince Honda to stay, for instance.
I think that'd be a bit of a risk because their team would be really living on a prayer. So let's hope it goes better than that.
Oh, we've had enough of them. Yeah, he kind of seemed kind of bedded in with the Meyer Shank team. He was in the back of the 2-seater, I think, driven by Helio Castroneves. It was weird seeing Helio on the sidelines, to be quite honest, but doing a mentoring job for Blomqvist, who, Blomqvist actually, I don't think we touched on him, had a pretty solid weekend, actually. He actually, I think he had a slightly difficult time of things when he was kind of just getting used to it, especially physically in those trial. Well, it's not really trial races because he was already secured in the seat, but those 3 substitute races when Pagenaud was out late last season, finished 24th, 25th, 26th, so to finish 17th, qualified decently, I think. Decent, not too bad.
Right, so we need to go over the results for the inaugural round 1 of the Fast 6 Predictor Tournament for 2024. So, just to confirm, our Fast 6 from the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg is as far. I need to do an announcer voice. We're going to do an announcer voice every rate. Your Fast 6 from the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg was Joseph Newgarden, Felix Rosenqvist, Palou Award, Colton Herta, Roman Grosjean, and Marcus Ericsson. So, let's begin with the guesses of Archie. We'll go first for this week. So, you guessed Carl Kirkwood. Didn't go too well. You guessed Colton Herta. You guessed Palou Award. You guessed Alex Palou. You guessed Callum Ilott. You put him in for Newgarden last minute, so that was pretty unfortunate there. And then you also went for Scott McLaughlin. So that's 2 for you.
Yeah, I take it as a minor win. I predicted that Callum Ilott would be in the seat. We didn't know at the time. It wasn't going to be anyone else. But, that is a 0.01 points.
Maybe at the end of the season, if it's a tie, we'll give you a 0.001 at the end so you can claim the title. Yes. Ellie went for Palou, Dixon, Lundgaard, Kirkwood, Grosjean, which was an outstanding guess, and Rossi. However, Grosjean was the only correct guess, so you end this week on 1.
Grosjean was the only correct.
It's a pretty impressive guess.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. The only one, but fair play. That's pretty much worth all 6 because that is a great shot. I'm not sure anyone was expecting that.
I'm pretty sure I studied him on a limb as well.
I went for Award, Palou, McLaughlin, Herta, Ericsson, and Power. So I got 3, which isn't too horrendous. I took out Newgarden for Power last minute, so that's a bit annoying. But you're standing.
Why do we not have faith?
I don't know. Anyway, standings after round 1. I'm on 3, Archie's on 2, and Ellie is on 1. Do we know the format? Is the format for the thermal the same? I don't know.
So the format for thermal is
qualifying traditional or
no?
Not?
It's not. Oh. So I think they are in 2 groups. I assume it'll be. I don't know whether it'll be done on practice times or championship order. I need to read up on it. I think we'll obviously bring you a more accurate preview next week before it starts. But
we'll try our best for a Fast 6 tournament.
So
Fast 6.
I don't know whether they all qualify together or they qualify separately. But either way, they go into 2 heat races.
Yeah,
which is essentially qualifying. And the top 6 from each of those heat races go into kind of the grand finale race. And there'll be 12 cars in the final race. So, yeah, we'll bring a more accurate kind of preview of that when we actually have kind of tips up on what's actually going on, because it is a little bit confusing. That's up next, obviously.
But yeah, I think that's it from St. Petersburg. I think I'm right in saying. So good way to start the season. I think a nice calm one to settle us in before. I'm guessing thermal is probably going to be quite manic, so it gives us a nice gentle walk into the season. Not like last year's where it was like, oh, you get all of this crashes every 5 minutes. So I think we're all right. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed round 1 as much as we did, and obviously a few more features for this year. So I think next week we'll be previewing the thermal amongst other bits.
Yeah, going over some storylines for the year as well.
Yeah, we'll do bits of that, bits of thermal preview as well, because obviously that's what's next. So I think I'm personally really looking forward to that. So it's going to be quite a good race. So stay tuned. Storylines and thermal preview next week. So as I said, thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the season opener as much as we did, and we'll see you next time.